At my grandpa's will reading, my parents burned the $38 million check he left me, right there in front of everyone. I'm Sarah, and I smiled. But what they set on fire wasn't what they thought. What would you do if your own family tried to erase you? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know. Lemon oil and old paper clung to the conference room like a family secret. When my father struck the match and the $38 million check curled black, I smiled. We sat around a table heavy enough to anchor a boat. Bottled waters sweated onto plain coasters. Dust hung in the plantation shutters like patient snow. Mr. Halpern, thin folder, steady hands, cleared his throat. We're gathered to honor the final wishes of Merrick Wynn. His voice had the smoothness of a man who's read a lifetime of endings. He started with the small things. To Callie Wynn, the Jackson Hole cabin and the 1959 Gibson. Callie's cream blouse caught the late October light. Her mouth formed an O and tried to make it a grin. To David and Margaret Wynn, the grandfather clock, select vinyl, and a charitable gift of $10,000. My mother rolled one pearl between thumb and forefinger, testing for heat. My father crossed his arms tighter, elbows barricading the air. Halpern turned a page. Paper slid on paper, soft as surf. To my granddaughter, Sarah, my confidant, I leave my entire financial estate. No flourish, just a line dropped into still water. Silence landed. Outside, a gull laughed like someone who'd seen this coming. Halpern placed a single check on the wood. In one quick reach, my father snatched it. His lighter clicked once, twice, a dry insect refusing life. On the third flick, the flame caught. Orange licked the corner. Heat kissed his knuckles. He didn't blink. "You think this buys you back in?" he asked, voice pitched for the back row. My mother tore the envelope addressed in Grandpa's blocky script with surgical care. "This is what happens when you betray your family," she said, as if reciting grace. I kept my hands folded. I didn't plead with fire or ash. I let my face stay still, the way you do when you've practiced for years. In my purse, a small brass key pressed a half moon into my palm. At Hillstone Diner a month ago, Grandpa had slid that key across a sticky booth with a slice of cornbread. You'll need this when you're ready to claim yourself. Callie watched the flame gutter and looked to me for the cue. Her half-smile wobbled, rebuilt itself, wobbled again. Mr. Halpern shut the folder with the same calm he'd opened it and gave me a plain look that translated to, "There's more paper than theater." The hallway smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. My father held the door with the same hand that had held the match. "Actions have consequences," he said to no one in particular. My mother's fingers lifted toward my sleeve and retreated before touch. Callie's heels clicked too fast, as if speed could edit memory. Outside, Meeting Street gave us a salt breeze and the clang of a trolley bell. Harbor Light came in generous bands. A dog tugged its owner past the courthouse steps, oblivious to wills and witnesses. I stood a minute, breathing in air that didn't know my name, then headed home over uneven bricks that made my low heels considerate. In my apartment, I locked the deadbolt because my body likes rituals. The quiet was honest. HVAC sigh, a neighbor's laugh, the soft thud of mail finding someone else's floor. I set my heels side by side like swimmers catching breath, draped my coat on a chair, and pulled out the napkin-wrapped envelope Grandpa had given me. The wax seal wore the faintest thumbprint. Mine sat beside it, a month-old echo. "Don't open it unless they burn it," he'd said, buttering cornbread like the sentence weighed nothing. I broke the seal with my nail. Inside, a check that matched the one we'd just fed to Flame. Same seal, same neat lines, stamped in tiny red letters, non-negotiable copy. Taped to its back, a USB drive hardly bigger than my thumbnail and a note in his square hand. "Open the real file." I slid the drive into my laptop. No password screen, no drumroll, just a single folder called Inheritance. Inside sat one PDF labeled Trust Transfer Executed. I clicked. The pages were clean as new linen. Dates, stamps, witness lines, a notary's seal sinking the paper like an anchor. Weeks ago, quietly, the funds had moved. The account number ended with his birthday backwards, Grandpa's private joke since I was 8. My name appeared where it needed to be, spelled correctly, not a promise, but a record. I breathed out. A sentence from his last letter, creased and living in my wallet, rose up like a handrail. Survival isn't weakness. It's proof of strength. He'd mailed it when the heat in my first apartment sputtered, and I learned how loud cold can be. Tonight, it felt less like comfort and more like instruction. I made tea because the kettle's small tantrum steadies me. Steam scribbled soft cursive against the lamp. The mug warmed my fingers. The nick in the handle found its way beneath my thumb as if it had been carved there for this exact hour. Through the window, taillights smeared red against damp pavement. Somewhere upstairs, a faucet squealed and calmed down. Ordinary sounds were doing their job, keeping the floor under my feet. On the table beside my laptop, I set the brass key. Oval bow, old teeth. The shine had thinned where other thumbs had worried it smooth. He'd given it to me on my 18th birthday, wrapped in a cedar-scented handkerchief. "You'll need this," he'd said, sliding me cake with the other hand. Back then, I filed it under poetry. Tonight, I moved it to instructions. I scrolled through the PDF again, slower. Boring lines, which is to say the true ones. A private vault listed at a place I've walked past 100 times without seeing. A contact name I didn't recognize. A line from some young associate. Distribution complete. As bland as a bus schedule. That's the thing about real power. It rarely raises its voice. My phone buzzed face down. I let it. There are days to answer and days to digest. I was busy recognizing the shape of a new room from the inside. I closed the laptop and listened to the apartment reintroduce itself. The refrigerator hummed a low A. A car door thumped down on the street and someone laughed, the kind of laugh that bends a long day back into shape. I traced the key's teeth with one finger until the pattern felt like a map. They had burned the performance. Grandpa had already moved the money, already built the bridge, already tucked tools into my pocket. A copy to satisfy the flames, a drive to wake the truth, a key to open the door I hadn't known I owned. I finished the tea, rinsed the mug, and set it to dry on a towel that still smelled faintly of summer laundry. Then I turned off the lamp, letting the window hold the last of the harbor light. In the dim, the brass key caught a thin line of glow and threw it back. If they set a fire, he'd left me the way out of the smoke. Tomorrow, I'd start walking. Tonight, I let the new room settle around me, and I held the key. By breakfast, my debit card chirped declined. By noon, the DMV clerk, kind eyes behind thick lenses, told me, politely, that I was legally dead. I stood with paper ticket B108 while lights buzzed. "You'll need to file a correction," she said. "Vital records can expedite, but it still takes weeks." Weeks. As if time fixes erasure. Outside on Broad Street, live oaks stitched the sky, and a salt wind lifted napkins. Across the sidewalk, a woman in a powder blue silk scarf watched without blinking. Oversized sunglasses. She didn't smile. Neither did I. I tucked the ticket into my pocket like proof I had once existed and walked. At home, I tried the bank again, then the app. Errors bloomed. Account not found. Profile inactive. When I finally reached a human, the hold music fell away. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Wynn. Our system reflects a deceased status." He read the date. 2 weeks ago. "There is an affidavit process." "I'm breathing on the phone," I said. "I understand," he replied. "The flags are automatic." The brass key in my purse pressed a crescent into my palm. Grandpa had put it there years ago, wrapped in a handkerchief that still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco. "You'll need this when you're ready to claim yourself." I wasn't sure I felt ready. I did feel erased. Those two feelings often share a border. Langford Private Vaults hides behind an unmarked door between a wine shop and a bookstore. Inside, the temperature dipped and the quiet thickened. The attendant checked the key, a ledger, and led me down a corridor of steel. "Box 17, she said, and left me with a drawer that slid out like a held breath. The folder inside was matte black and cool. First page, a cashier's check with an embedded seal you could feel with your thumb. The amount matched what had burned. This one pulsed with watermarks. Behind it, notarized land deeds, Charleston lots I'd walked past for years without knowing the ground held my name. Stock certificates followed. All the voting shares of Wynn Carroll Holdings, my signature line blank and waiting. In a velvet pouch, a flash drive. Back in my apartment, I slid the drive into my laptop. No splash screen, just a folder named Inheritance, as if the word itself were a room. I clicked the video. Grandpa filled the frame, sun pouring over his shoulder from the back porch. "If they tried to erase you," he said, "this is how you come back. This isn't just money. It's memory." He leaned close. "Trust the paper trail more than the performance." An alert pinged. Estate inbox, no subject. The body held one sentence. "They're not after the money. They're after the signature." Attachment, an asset transfer form with my name typed where a signature should be. The second page was worse. Another version already signed, my name curled in a hand that was not mine. I opened the company dashboard with credentials Grandpa had staged months ago, an alias and a password only a grandfather would choose. The portal greeted me cheerfully. Pending proposals glowed yellow. Asset reassignments trailed down the page, some time-stamped for the hours I was supposedly filing for a death certificate. Approvals sat under my name, neat as labels. In the audit log, a gap blinked where a line should have lived. I pulled the blinds. Outside, gulls tumbled against a pale sky. I scrolled slowly, looking for seams. Whoever was doing this believed in speed and fear and the cloud of authority a rubber stamp can make. They also believed I wouldn't come back. My phone chimed. A text from an unknown number with a Charleston area code. A photo of the DMV ticket, B1008, cropped close. No words. Just the ticket I'd folded, now open in someone else's hand. I set the phone face down and listened for ordinary noises. Pipes ticking, an elevator cable humming, a neighbor's radio searching for a station. Proof of life. I brewed tea. On the table, I arranged the pieces like a lesson plan. The cashier's check, the deeds, the stock certificates, the velvet pouch. Grandpa's line threaded my thoughts. Trust the paper trail. I made a short list in my designer's notebook. Call vital records for an affidavit. Flag fraud with the bank. Print the screens that put my name where it shouldn't be. Contact the estate attorney. Carry copies. But the blue scarf needled the edge of my thoughts, watching without blinking. I flipped the phone again, zoomed into the reflection on the ticket photo. Only a smear of leaves, no face. By late afternoon, the light thinned to the honey-colored Charleston saves for porch stories. I worked through the vault papers until my shoulders ached, then checked the estate email headers. The message had hopped through a private relay I recognized from Grandpa's notes, the kind he used when secrecy was a courtesy. In the footer, a postscript I missed the first time. Box array. He joked about it once as we passed the exchange. History keeps two ledgers, the glossy one for tours and the stubborn one in the basement. Box array would be the basement ledger, not on Langford's website, not on any map, a place you only find if someone leaves you a key in a sentence. Evening gathered. On the sidewalk below, a couple argued about paint chips with the gentleness that sounds like love. I shut the laptop, slipped the brass key and the flash drive into my bag, and stood in the doorway until the room returned my shape to me. Erasure is tidy until a person refuses to be tidied. Somewhere a ceiling fan ticked, and the hallway smelled faintly of fresh paint. Right. Before bed, I added one line under my list. They think the signature is a door they can force. It's a door I'll choose. I snapped the fireproof folder closed and slid it behind the winter coats, where things wait and keep their temperature. On my phone, the ticket photo glowed like a dare. I deleted it, emptied the trash, then powered the device down and set it beside the mug. The window breathed salt. Tomorrow, I would hunt for the bones. The blue scarf will be there, so will I. Langford's box array wasn't on any brochure. It lived beyond the last traffic light, where the road thinned and the air smelled like rain and Spanish moss. I drove with the window cracked. A freight horn floated from somewhere I couldn't see. Sodium lights hummed over a row of low metal doors. Unit 19B sat in the middle like a held breath. A tag on the latch read W.M. Trill, Grandpa's joke alias. I turned the small brass key he'd given me at 18. The lock left a tacky film on my fingers. The door rattled up and cool air breathed over my shins. Inside, simplicity. One metal shelf, one fireproof briefcase, one folded camp chair. I set the case on my knee. The latches popped like knuckles. On top lay my original long-form birth certificate. Not the tidy revision bearing my stepfather's name, but the creased, county-stamped sheet with the name that fit my bones. Beneath it, 12 envelopes in Grandpa's steady hand, each dated near a family milestone. My graduation, their vow renewal, the Christmas I ate takeout by the window. Under those, a deed to... I opened one letter and read standing in the doorway as a passing shower silvered the asphalt. The paper smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and lemon oil. "Sarah girl," he wrote, "they won't erase you, not while I'm still standing." The rest was small news and a sketched studio plan, but the spine was the same. Survive first, then build. I closed the case and lowered the door. On the tag's back, in pencil, a tiny arrow pointed at the latches, as if he didn't trust the future to remember how things open. I slid the key onto my chain and drove back toward town, wipers clicking, the marsh turning copper in the late light. By late afternoon, I was in a chair that didn't squeak, in a law office that knew better than to rush. Sylvia Orton's nameplate was brass. Behind her, framed maps traced title creeks. "Facts first," she said, sliding me a legal pad. "Leave the adjectives to me." I laid proof in a neat grid. The cashier's check with its embedded seal, the executed trust transfer filed weeks ago, screenshots from the company dashboard where approvals wore my name like a borrowed coat, the forged e-signature, its loop too eager, the fresh sealed deed, a printout from the DMV declaring me legally deceased. I added the storage tag because jokes become evidence when you keep them long enough. Sylvia read without blinking. She drummed one fingertip on her tablet twice. "We file for a TRO and a preliminary injunction today," she said. "We move to correct your vital records. We request an emergency hearing." "What breaks first?" I asked. "Paper," she said. "It's brittle when you hold it to the right light." We called the Register of Deeds on speaker. The clerk sounded like someone who respects both rules and lunch. I read book and page numbers. He went quiet, then said, "Yes, ma'am, that instrument's recorded. Seal appears authentic." He wouldn't say more. While Sylvia drafted affidavits, I tabbed exhibits A through F: identity, trust, assets, dashboard, signature analysis, deed. I printed an audit log and circled the blank a forger had left. Sylvia dictated a paragraph about signature cadence, the micro pause before a downstroke, the shallow wobble where a heart doubts. "People fake lines," she said. "They don't fake pressure." "Witnesses?" she asked. "Mr. Halpern," I said. "He can speak to timing." I hesitated. "And the letters, if the court allows." "Keep them as ballast," she said, softer. By 5, our motion packet had the heft of a slim book. Sylvia's assistant scanned, numbered, and e-filed. The portal blinked green. My phone buzzed with a receipt, and a beat later, a calendar alert. "Emergency TRO, PI requested. Assigned Judge Kinley. Proposed Monday 9:00 a.m. We didn't cheer. She nodded once, the way people nod at bridges that hold. "We also asked Chambers for a temporary administrative hold on transfers pending the hearing," she said. "What about my legal status?" "Filed. Bureaucracy moves like molasses until you heat it." I walked out into a street rinsed clean by rain. The live oaks were still dripping. A chalkboard promised shrimp and grits. A couple debated oysters versus she-crab. At home, I lined the proofs on my table the way I line type on a poster, letting white space do some speaking. I wrote Monday, Kinley, 9:00 at the top of a page, then underlined it until the paper warmed. Sunday arrived like a towel from the dryer. I ironed the simple black dress my grandmother called court clean. Steam lifted, starch and citrus filled the room. I set out low heels that behave on marble. I slipped extra copies into a binder with tabs that clicked like reassurances. On the last tab, I wrote my full name, the long one, the original, and traced it with my thumbnail until the letters felt certain. I practiced Your Honor without sounding brittle. I practiced yes like a fact, not a plea. The kettle rattled, settled. Somewhere a vacuum droned and stopped. A neighbor laughed at a movie through a wall. At dusk, I texted Sylvia a photo of the binder spine. She replied with a thumbs up and 8:20 in the lobby. Early buys us silence. I powered down the lamp. The room held a clean, bright hush, the kind right before you say your name and it answers back. I slid the brass key and flash drive into my bag, placed the deed on top face down, and breathed. They had tried to write a story where I vanished between lines. Tomorrow, paper would speak in complete sentences. When the clerk called the case, I would stand, present tense. On the way to the elevator, I paused at the window. Evening gathered itself over Broad Street. Brake lights stitched a slow red ribbon, and a busker on the corner tuned a guitar to a stubborn note. In the lobby, a bowl of peppermints wore a neat sign, "Take one." I did, because small sugars help when large truths arrive. I kept the mint. Okay, quiet air, steady. Courtrooms have their own weather. Polished wood, recycled air, and that heavy pressure right before a storm. When Judge Kinley said, "Play the video," the air inside stopped moving. I'd been in the Charleston County Courthouse only once before, years ago for a parking appeal, but this was different. Monday morning drizzle streaked the tall windows. The hallway outside smelled faintly of old paper and coffee brewed too long. Sylvia, my attorney, had 3 bullet points on her yellow pad. Status, forgery, relief. She didn't need more. My parents sat in the front row, side by side, but not touching. Mom's pearls were perfectly centered, her eyes darting only when she adjusted them. Dad's posture was a salute, back straight, chin set. Callie hovered 1 row behind, mascara ready to make its case if needed. Mr. Halpern, Grandpa's attorney, waited calmly, his briefcase balanced on his knees. The bailiff's voice was flat as a dial tone. Case of win versus win. We stood. Sylvia rose smoothly, introducing herself and the relief we were seeking. Your Honor, during the period my client was officially listed as deceased, multiple transactions occurred under her name, corporate approvals, asset transfers. We've provided an expert affidavit showing the signatures were digitally forged. Opposing counsel, young and polished, smirked at the phrasing. Administrative error, he said. A family misunderstanding dressed up as litigation. Sylvia didn't flinch. Exhibit A, DMV record marking my client deceased. Exhibit C, time-stamped corporate approvals during that period. Exhibit F, expert analysis of the forged signatures metadata. Not feelings, facts. Judge Kinley examined the pages like a carpenter measuring a cut. If she was legally dead, who authorized these transfers? The smirk faltered. We dispute. On the record, Kinley pressed. Sylvia spoke before the silence grew stale. We also have a video declaration from the decedent, recorded 3 months before his passing. Play the video, the judge said. The projector hummed to life, and Grandpa's face filled the screen, sunlight spilling from behind him in the old sunroom. His cardigan sleeves were pushed up, hands folded loosely. If you're watching this, he said, it means they tried to erase her. Let the record show I changed the will knowingly and freely. I named Sarah because she endured. The benches creaked. Somewhere a cough broke the stillness. Grandpa smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both defiance and love. This isn't just money. It's memory. When the video ended, the silence was heavier than before. Judge Kinley turned to Halpern. You supervised the execution of these documents? Yes, Your Honor. The decedent anticipated disputes and wanted no ambiguity. Mom whispered something I couldn't catch. Dad's jaw tightened until his cheekbones stood out. Callie looked down at her hands. Sylvia requested the court freeze contested assets, suspend corporate actions taken under my deceased status, preserve all access logs, and order an emergency correction of my legal status. Kinley took his time. Rain tapped softer against the tall windows. The clerk slid forward a glass bowl of peppermints, an odd courthouse ritual. On this showing, Kinley said, the court grants a temporary restraining order. All contested assets are frozen. Corporate actions under Sarah Wynne since the date of the deceased flag are suspended. The DMV and registrar will process the legal status correction immediately. All logs are to be preserved. He looked at my parents for a beat too long. You didn't just dispute a will. You vanished a person. Dad's shoe tapped once against the wooden floor and stilled. The gavel landed with a dull thud. The air shifted, less like a storm, more like the sky after one. People stood, coats rustling. I tasted the faint winter green of a peppermint I'd pocketed without thinking. Outside, the drizzle had cleared. The courthouse steps shone damp under a thin, bright sky. My phone buzzed. Callie, please, just us. I need to tell you something. Sylvia slipped her pad into her bag. Paper spoke, she said. Paper spoke, I echoed, though my mind was already on the text. Across the street, a woman in a blue scarf leaned against a column, sunglasses on despite the pale light. She didn't wave, just watched, still as a photo. I typed back, 10 minutes, cafe on Broad. The courthouse doors closed behind me with a slow, heavy sound, like a lock turning. The brass key in my bag shifted, tapping once against the chair leg as I adjusted the strap. Doors, I thought. Everything has one. Callie picked a cafe with Edison bulbs and perfect lattes, the kind of place where apologies look prettier. The air smelled of espresso and cinnamon, soft music curling around the clink of ceramic cups. She'd stirred the foam of her latte into a thin, cold spiral by the time I slid into the chair across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The big front window caught a shaft of late afternoon light, and through it I caught a flash of blue silk. Someone crossing the street, scarf lifting in the breeze. Before disappearing from view, I felt the quiet pressure of being watched, the same way you feel a storm building on the horizon without seeing the clouds. I didn't know about the death certificate, Callie blurted, her voice low but urgent. They said it was routine paperwork. Dad said to sign where he marked. She gripped the cardboard coffee sleeve, twisting it until the seam tore and the paper frayed into little curls. I let her words hang, my phone lying face down in my lap, recording with the screen dark. The barista passed behind her, humming softly, clearing plates from the next table. Callie's eyes were glossy, her smile stretched too thin. "Who handled it?" I asked. My voice was calm enough to surprise even me. She hesitated, then said, "Elise, Mom's friend from the family office. She coordinated everything." Her gaze flicked to the window as if expecting the scarf to appear again. "The blue scarf," I said. Her head snapped toward me, pupils widening. "You've seen her?" I nodded once. "This morning, outside the courthouse." Callie exhaled, a shaky sound that barely counted as a laugh. I thought if I didn't go along, I'd be cut out too. I told myself it was better to stay close, maybe keep it from getting worse. She stared down at her latte, the gold ring on her finger clinking against the mug. It was too large, too new, something gifted, not earned. I didn't fill the silence. Years in this family had taught me that rescuing someone from their own words usually meant burying the truth. She was already folding inward, her shoulders curving toward the table. "You were scared," I said finally, my tone even. "I believe that." Her eyes searched mine, maybe for a sign I'd offer her absolution. I didn't. I reached for my coat, sliding my phone into the pocket, recording saved. "I'm done being erased to make other people comfortable." She reached out, but her hand stopped short of mine, fingers curling back. I stood, the cafe's chalkboard menu looming over my shoulder. Pumpkin bread under glass domes, a tangle of flyers on the community board, lost dogs, beginner yoga, weekend markets. All the small, ordinary anchors that reminded me the world existed beyond this family's games. As I stepped outside, the air was cooler than I'd expected. My phone buzzed. Sylvia's name. "Digital subpoenas came back," she said without preamble. "Access logs show the corporate approvals came from an internal workstation, Elise's credentials. And listen to this. There was a queued remote sale for the afternoon before the TRO hit." "Blocked now?" I asked. "Blocked," she confirmed. "But we need Elise under oath. I'm filing to compel her deposition and to preserve the family office's email server. No one's wiping anything on my watch." The sidewalk was damp from the morning rain, leaves pressed flat against the concrete. A delivery truck rumbled past, shaking the cafe's front window. Just as I hung up, another notification slid across the screen. Email from the county clerk. "Certified deed, recording complete. Pick up with ID tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. I texted back one word. Confirmed. The brass key in my coat pocket was warm from my hand. Tomorrow it would open more than a door. It would lock my name back into place, exactly where it was meant to be. The clerk slid the deed across the polished laminate like a quiet medal. No confetti, no applause, just my name printed where it belonged. Her smile was small but certain. "Sign here, Ms. Wynne," she said, pointing to the receipt. Next to it lay a status correction notice, the word "alive" neatly checked in red. The pen felt heavier than it should. I pressed my name into the line, the ink sinking into the paper like it meant to stay. After weeks of being a ghost on every system, the act of signing felt like reclaiming breath. She handed me a slim manila envelope and a wipe for any thumbprint smudges. Bureaucracy had its own tenderness. Outside, November sunlight slid over the courthouse steps, rinsed clean from last night's rain. I paused halfway down, took out my phone, and snapped a single photo. Deed in hand, courthouse behind me, sky a washed blue. I typed one caption: "They tried to burn the legacy. I inherited the foundation." I sent it to no one in particular and slid the phone away. Sylvia called before I reached the sidewalk. "We're good," she said. "TRO holds, next hearing scheduled, and the IG is looking into the forged records. Banks have restored your accounts. You're officially back on the grid." Across the street, a figure in a blue silk scarf lingered at a corner. Elise. She read a vacancy sign in a law office window, tilted her head, then turned away without hurry. Watching power lose interest is like watching the tide recede, quiet but final. I headed toward King Street with the envelope tucked under my arm. At the hardware store, the air smelled of cedar and sawdust. I bought paint rollers, trays, a bundle of cedar shims, drop cloths folded into perfect squares, and 2 rolls of painter's tape. The clerk in a Clemson cap handed me the receipt and said, "First coat's always the worst. Keep going." The studio was small, brick-walled, with tall windows that caught the light in neat rectangles. The air was cool, faintly dusty, like a room waiting for its first conversation. I unlocked the door, set down the envelope, and unrolled Grandpa's blueprint, creases worn from his hands. Across the top, his block letters read, "Make something they can't erase." The half-filled business license form lay beside it, the pen stroke still steady despite the tremor he'd had in his last year. I finished the form at a makeshift desk, a board balanced on 2 milk crates. The pen scratched softly, the sun warming the paper as I wrote. In the corner, a portable speaker hummed an old soul track, the kind Grandpa liked when fixing the porch railing. I taped along the baseboards, poured paint into a tray, and pushed the roller across the wall. Each pass landed with a soft thud, covering the scuffed beige with clean white. Paint freckles dotted my arm. A faint salt ring circled my boots from last night's sidewalks. I stuffed paper towels into my back pocket and kept rolling. On the windowsill, I lined up Grandpa's letters. I didn't open them. Their presence was enough. Lemon oil and old paper scented the air, the same smell from the day in the conference room when Dad struck the match. Sylvia's name lit my phone again. "Filed to compel Elise's deposition," she said. "Preservation order granted on the family office servers. Everything's locked until we're done." "Good," I said, not slowing the roller. When the walls were covered, I peeled the tape in long, clean strips. The room looked brighter, as if someone had drawn a fresh breath. I swept grit toward the door, the broom bristles rasping against the wood. A strip of painter's tape clung to my sleeve. I left it there. From the blueprint, I measured spaces for shelves, a work table, and light fixtures. The pencil marks lined up neatly against the drawing, each one a small claim on the future. In a corner box, I found an old "open" sign with a loop of twine. I lifted it just to feel its weight. This was the shift, from being the subject of someone else's paperwork to writing my own. I wiped a smudge of paint from the window latch, stepped back, and saw the room not as it was, but as it could be. Beginning, not ending. The deed went into a flat file I'd salvaged from an antique shop, labeled with black tape, title and proof. The drawer slid shut with a sound that felt like closure. The bell over the door jingled. A woman in a floral apron stepped in, her palms dusted with yellow pollen. "You the new neighbor?" she asked, eyes scanning the fresh white walls. "I am," I said, the words settling into place. She held out a paper cup. "We've been saving you a welcome coffee." I took it, the warmth seeping into my hands. She nodded at the blueprint on the floor. "You building something?" I glanced at the roller resting in the tray, at the letters on the sill, at the clean walls. "Yes," I said and smiled, "something they can't erase." When I hung the "open" sign on the door, the morning light spilled through the glass as if it was wrapping its arms around the freshly painted room. I had gone from being erased on paper to signing my name again, unshakable in the knowledge that no one could take it away. I realized the greatest inheritance isn't money or property, but the right to author your own story, even when others try to write it for you. In life, if we hold on to truth and kindness, there's always a way to begin again, no matter how late it feels. If this story speaks to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts, or the moment you reclaimed something precious that was yours.